All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Inflamed in the Membrane. Today, I've got on my show as a guest, Mike, the Heal Your Gut guy. Mike has shown me a very interesting part of healing and recovery based on something called German New Medicine. Mike, I'm going to let you take it from here. Just tell us all about you, all about your Crohn's journey, and how German New Medicine, what it is, and how it helped you.
Okay. Hi. Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Mike, the Heal Your Gut guy, and yeah, guys, I have literally tried everything in the book to try to heal my Crohn's disease, and nothing really. I saw some success with a lot of these like holistic things, like doing the diets and the supplements and enemas, coffee enemas. I mean, you name it. Like I've tried it, and I didn't really get that full freedom to eat whatever I want until I started German New Medicine, which gets to the psychological root cause of our Crohn's disease, of our digestive issues. And it wasn't until I understood that like your brain controls everything in your body. Your brain controls disease in your body. It's a disease is like from a German New Medicine perspective. This is what sold me on German New Medicine, because the first time someone told me about it, I thought they were crazy. But this was a student who had tried everything. I had a student, he ate perfectly. He ate absolutely perfectly for a whole year, and he was still losing weight, still having diarrhea all the time. And then he started doing German New Medicine. He started eating whatever he wanted, and he started addressing these emotional issues in his life. And I thought he was crazy. And he literally gained 20 pounds eating like pizza and like chicken wings, eating all these taboo foods, eat bread, gluten, like you name it. He was eating all these things, and he gained like literally 20 pounds in a month. So I've always trying to get to the root cause, and I thought it had to do with diet and had to do with, these holistic things, nutritional deficiencies and infections and stuff like that, but it's actually a psychological thing.
Wow. Personally, when I first heard this, I was a little bit like, okay, What are you selling me? Like, what is this snake oil? What's going on? And I took it upon myself to just start investigating all of the real literature that was proposed by Dr. Hammer. And I got to say, I was very impressed by the way that things were set up. You can clearly see that this guy is very intelligent, very organized, and just the idea that, depending on what condition you have, and we can really correlate it to some sort of a conflict shock. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was extremely skeptical of German New Medicine when I was first told about it. But when I started learning about it, like the first thing that got my attention is that he would look at the CT brain scans of all of his patients, and he started to notice a pattern. If someone had Crohn's disease, they had a ring in the same exact location 100% of the time. If someone didn't have Crohn's disease, that ring would not be there. And he found for every single condition in the body, lung cancer, perianal fistulas, heartburn, there would be a ring in a very specific location. And he had the diseases, like the pathology of diseases mapped out. Like it's like you can see the pattern in all these diseases in our body. And but yeah, for me, it was actually pretty difficult to get it because I've had Crohn's my whole life, so I couldn't remember the conflict shock. But for my other students, it was like very apparent. It was just like after a football injury, after a bad breakup, after a divorce, like that's when their digestive issues started. For most people, it's like they were going through a very stressful event in their life when their digestive issues started.
So what could the digestive issues look like when somebody's going through this type of process? And then what does it look like when they resolve the conflict?
So one good example is a buddy of mine. He was playing high school football. He was really good. He was going to get drafted into a college football, football was his career. He hated school. He had nothing else planned. He had no backup net. And so, like on the second game of the season of his senior year, he broke his arm. He shattered his arm, and his football career was over. And so this left him devastated. He did not know what to do. And so what the body did to try to help him overcome this hard to digest situation in his life, this crappy situation that he found himself in, is the body developed extra gut cells to help him digest and absorb this hard to digest thing in his life. So the cell proliferation, this was like a kind of like, there's no cell proliferation, there's no extra cells. What are you talking about? If you go and you look on your records for your colonoscopy and stuff, you'll see polyps. These are like cell growth. I mean, that the body was developing extra. How, like, if something is hard to digest, stuck in your gut, and remember, our brain doesn't know the difference between reality and like physical things. You know, if you look at a picture of a lemon, you know, your mouth buds will start to water. If you just tell your dog, "Hey, dinner time," they'll start drooling. You know, we have this ability to activate our digestive system just by thinking about something. And so like 3 or 4 months later, he decided he was going to become an entrepreneur, and he got like a new job, and he went to celebrate with his sister. He's like, "I'm going to get a hamburger, I'm going to get a nice juicy cheeseburger, and I'm going to have a milkshake." And that was like him celebrating his new job, like his new life path. And when he got home that night, he had horrible bloody diarrhea. And so what was happening when he resolved this conflict, the body said, "Okay, we don't need these extra gut cells anymore," and it starts to get rid of them. And it's a bloody, messy process. It's not a fun process to remove flesh from your body. And he blamed it on the food. He blamed it on the milkshake and the hamburger and the red meat, even though he'd had that to eat a million times before. And usually this process only lasts for, it depends on the intensity of the conflict, but usually this process only lasts for a couple of weeks, but it can get hung up. Like, let's say do I do this? Oh, do I do this job? Do I work with this business or that business? You know, this indigestible situation can like extend itself forever and ever and ever. And that's how someone ends up with like a chronic condition that lasts for years and years and years.
Right. So when the diagnosis of Crohn's disease becomes the new conflict shock, what do people have to do?
So for a lot of people, you know, they get the Crohn's disease diagnosis, they get the colitis diagnosis, and then this becomes indigestible because they're trying to digest how to best manage their Crohn's and colitis. They start to become afraid of foods. Right. Oh, I can't eat this. I can't eat this. Now they're perceiving these foods as hard to digest, and the body will develop extra gut cells to try to digest it because it perceives it as hard to digest. So, and I know that sounds ridiculous. I can see that.
So, like,
but I've seen people get rid of
so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. I've seen people get rid of, like, I've seen people who were allergic to water. Like, what do you do when someone's allergic to water? You're going to tell, like, and they're getting it from, like, a fresh spring or something ridiculous. Like, there's nothing you could do. It's psychological. I've seen people, like, literally go from allergic to water to, like, eating fast food and, like, whatever they want in, like, days.
So how did you figure it out? How did you figure out your indigestible anger, and what brought you to the point where you decided, you know what, as hokey and as hocus pocus as this all sounds, I want to try it?
Well, for me, it was learning it, and how I just never heard anything more intelligently and elegantly explained. Because it doesn't just explain Crohn's disease, it explains every disease in the body. Pretty much, and it's all consistent. It all makes sense. It's all backed by real data, and it's not construed with statistics. You know, like, it's very easy to make stuff up and get confused with statistics. You know, he didn't write something down unless it was true 100% of the time. Dr. Hammer would say the therapy is in the knowledge, so just gaining the knowledge. But ultimately, for me, you know, I was taking on like the really tough cases, and there's just a point where I had perfected the diet. You know, there's no way I can make this food easier to digest, and there's like no way I can get more nutrients into this person's diet. I I know how to kill candida. I know how to kill these bad bacteria and fungi with just one drop of a certain essential oil. Like, that's easy. I know kefir and the best probiotic supplements you can take. I had people doing things perfectly, and they still would have horrible gut issues. And so I knew I was missing a huge part of the puzzle, and German New Medicine was that huge part of the puzzle, and it really changed the way on how I do everything.
Excellent. So I would think, like, it really does sound like a lot of this has to do with being there for someone emotionally as they discover what their unresolved traumas are. But do you feel, just from learning German New Medicine, do you feel like you're qualified to be able to give people this type of advice?
Yeah, I mean, it's really... Yeah, yes. I mean, I've been through the process. Like, I've helped many people through this process, and it's just because. So let's say you go to a GI doctor, and you get this Crohn's disease diagnosis, and they're like, "Hey, you have." I mean, this is something I've helped many people with. Hey, I need help. In 3 days, I'm scheduled to get my colon removed. Like, do you think I should get it removed? And I'm like, no. Like, you're probably fine. Like, and it's, sometimes that has to happen. The damage is too severe. But I've helped so many people save their colon so they don't have to wear a bag of poop for the rest of their life. And just getting that diagnosis, like, you have Crohn's disease, you have colitis, you are screwed. That emotionally, that can, from a German New Medicine perspective, that can give someone cancer, lung cancer. I mean, it's so I'm pretty much educating people on how their body is designed to work. German New Medicine isn't like this special pill that you take. It's the knowledge. So the way I like to explain German New Medicine in simplest terms is every organ in our body has a survival purpose. And so when we experience stress, like a stressful event that catches us off guard, our well-being there's a threat to we need help surviving. So it puts an organ into overdrive to help increase our chances of survival. It's like a subconscious thing. It happens in a split second. But when this conflict is on for, years and on and off for years and years and years, this organ has been in overdrive for years and years and years. That's when these nasty diseases and these nasty symptoms start to crop up.
Interesting. So, Mike, I think that knowing this, if I talk to somebody new and I let them know about German New Medicine, and I tell them about that there's like an unresolved conflict, especially one that's deep-rooted in anger, something that they're angry about. Would it be fair to warn them once they resolve this might be the worst flare of their life?
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. Everyone is at a different place in their conflict resolution. Like, some people are like in the process of like going through a divorce. It really depends on how the person like perceives their situation. This person could be like really pessimistic and doom and gloom, like, hey, I hate my job, blah 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 blah. It's just like, hey, at the end of the day, you could change your perspective. Like, if you understand the consequences of your indigestible anger, it's a lot easier. There's a lot more motivation to ratchet down, your emotional response to something your boss says or something like that. So, it's motivation to quit your job and find a new path. Like, it depends on the job. Maybe the job is absolutely miserable. Like, it's torture to be at that job. Maybe it's the person's perception. Like, it just depends on the person's situation. There's so many variables we can play with. But, I'm in Austria right now, and, you could just see it in their culture. Like, they're way more laid back. No one works on Sundays. Everything closes early on Saturdays. And, from the U.S., it's always like, go, 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 go. And here, people just, like, things that a U.S. person would perceive as a problem, as just totally unnoticed on their radar. So taking action could be the right answer. It just depends on the person's situation. But a lot of the times, because you could take action on it, and then you get to the next job and you have the same exact attitude, and you're going to run into the same exact problems.
Right.
So it's a little of both. But I think the perception and the knowledge is just so important.
Okay, so where do you think somebody should start? Say they're, they've had Crohn's disease for a couple of years now. They're on a biologic. They're having flares every few months. What do you think is a good foundational start for somebody who's interested in learning more about German new medicine and is sick of, constantly going to the doctor, sick of being paranoid about their food, and really wants to get better and achieve this lifelong remission?
So Dr. Hammer would say the therapy is in the knowledge, and Learning GNM, the website that you use to learn all this stuff, can be a little intimidating. It's kind of more for practitioners and health coaches and stuff like that. So I've made the content on my website directly tailored to people dealing with gut issues and delivering that information to them from a German new medicine perspective. So understanding what's going on, but the first step, like starting to learn the knowledge, because it's a completely different perspective. That's really important. And so once you start educating yourself, the first thing that people need to do is identify what the conflict is, or at least identify what's currently stressing you out a lot. Like you'll start to, because once you become aware, like once you start looking for that, you'll start to see the patterns in what stressful situations in your life are triggering gut symptoms.
What's a good strategy to help somebody who's trying to figure this out? What do you think, like journaling or, recording stuff daily? Like what do you feel like helped you?
So essentially what I did is I just grabbed a white piece of paper and I just made a timeline. And okay, in high school, that's when my fistula first started to show up. What happened? What was I stressed out about in high school? Okay, getting good grades. My dad was always on, roasting me for getting bad grades. Getting, this and that. Oh, yeah. But what stressed me out the most was, getting dumped by girlfriends and stuff like that. That was my dad yelling at me for getting bad grades. That was pretty stressful. But then girl issues, way, what went off the Richter scale for you? For some people, they're like, oh, my girlfriend broke. I don't care. But then, getting kicked off the football team, that's really stressful for them. Maybe that person's from Texas or something. It depends on the individual. What really makes you stressed out?
Got it. So how do you feel about somebody who is, say, spending all of their time working a job that is not very satisfying to them? And do you feel like really pursuing your purpose and your passion has a lot to do with mitigating this maybe undigestible anger? Would you say that more people need to go out there and paint and play, and get become a little bit more of a kid again?
Yes and no, because I'm here chasing my dream and ambitions, and it's very easy to get frustrated when you're not getting the views and the success, and you're trying all these things. Even when you're chasing your passion, it's very easy to get frustrated and angry at not reaching your goals. So it's good, because some people, they're like, I'll work this job. I just want to pay rent and buy some nice thing. They don't care. That's not important to them. But then there's people like you and me where reaching our goals is super important. And when we don't reach our goals, we can really get stressed out about it and beat ourselves up about it and turn it into an indigestible morsel. So it really depends on the person's personality and what they strive for, but I think it's more important on how you do it, and how you do, whether you decide to not have these ambitious goals or whether you do what you love. It just depends on how you attack it.
No, I agree. I think that's great advice, even for somebody who doesn't have Crohn's, UC, or any IBD. Just being able to confront those conflicts as they come, not letting them build up, and face these issues with confidence, seeking closure. It's like it's very simple stuff if you think about it, right? But I think it's the hardest thing some people have ever done. Is really getting to the root cause of these, because sometimes it means having closure with an abusive person, or having closure with somebody that maybe isn't alive anymore. Like how do you resolve those on a case by case basis? Is that why you have your program? Do you guys really go in depth with that?
Well, yeah. So a lot of our program is just educating people on what's going on in the person's digestive system, like getting rid of food tracks. And we do have like a section in our program where we kind of go over popular life issues like, girlfriend issues, boyfriend issues, financial issues. Like, hey, these are some like things you can do. Like, hey, here's the biblical perspective. Like, this is how Jesus would deal with this issue. A lot of people use their faith to come to peace with the world and their conflicts. So, we can't solve somebody's conflicts for them because it's, even, if we're there holding their hand, the only thing that we can do is share the knowledge with them and point them in the right direction.
The funny part about all of this is that I achieved remission and got off the drugs before I even heard about your, German New Medicine and Heal the Gut Guy. But I went back and I took a look at my whole process, and I ended up, recognizing, identifying, and resolving several conflicts that were going on in my life between drug abuse, between conflicts with my brother and my mother who are living in another state. I don't get to see them as often as I wanted to. So there was a lot of unresolved conflicts there. And part of the process of getting sober was reaching back out to them, telling them my forgiveness, my point of view, and then laying down the foundation for our relationship moving forward. And then, I was pumped because I was fit, I was sober, I was eating very, very healthy. Foods didn't bother me. I had solid stools. I had no issues, and I'm ready to take on Crohn's disease, and it's gone.
Yeah, well, some people it just comes naturally to them, like the sunny disposition and, forgiving people. Like, I wasn't like that. Like, I was still angry at the world. Like, I'm still angry at GI doctors, but like
we can talk about GI doctors.
Like, I just get emotional talking about it, but I still get angry about things. I still, you could say, I have a short temper, but like in the past, I would just I wouldn't let it go. Like, it's like one thing just to be like, oh yeah, it's annoying, blah 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 blah. I'd be like, oh, I don't get this. Why is the world like this? Like, why can't people? Like, I would just be miserable for the rest of the day. And
cursing them left and right, talking all this oh, F this, F that. I actually used to bottle up all of my anger because I felt like that was the way men were supposed to hold their composure. Don't show emotion, don't resolve it, just keep on keeping on. And I think it's a very bad way to address any issue, let alone resolve conflicts. That's just avoiding the problem. And to anybody who thinks that, okay, so this is simple, I just avoid all my problems. No, you have to resolve them, so that's really getting down to the root cause of it. But here's my question for you. You, before German New Medicine, you started eating better, right? You've tried all sorts of diets. Did you try all sorts of exercises, meditation, yoga? And do you practice any of those still as just kind of maintenance to maybe help keep the anger down? I did do yoga and meditation, but I wasn't doing it right, I guess you could say. Without I'm an engineer and I'm like a nerd. Like, I need to understand how something works in order to have faith with it, with the system, and use it to its fullest advantage. But right now, I eat whatever I want. I
I used to be like religious, like, oh, I got to eat liver once a day. Like, oh, I could only have raw milk and it's organic. Oh, I can only have bread if it's from an ancient. I eat whatever I want. I got like a bag of gummy bears over there. Like I'm traveling right now. It's really, even in Europe and these like fancy countries, like it's very hard to follow like these cultish religious diets. And in a perfect world, it would be best to follow like a Weston A. Price, get all these nourishing foods into you. But essentially, I'm just eating what I crave and like what I want. Like the only thing that I do is like I have milk with whey protein to kind of help keep weight on me and build some muscle. But like other than that, I just eat whatever I want and try to enjoy food. And every once in a while, emotionally, I'll notice like I'm emotionally sensitive to that, or I'll run into a track. I'll just get diarrhea out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, what was I emotional about? What was going on? Let me try to identify this pattern. But I just with this knowledge, you learn more about yourself. You kind of learn, because when you get these symptoms, you're like, oh wow, I just resolved something. I wonder what it was. So
excellent.
Yeah.
No, I truly believe in that. And part of my recovery was, excuse me, part of my recovery, I was journaling a lot. And I was actually using microdosing psilocybin in order to, by the way, I'm fascinated with the nootropic and smart drug and psychedelic spectrum, because it actually allowed me to document my whole journey and then really zoom out and review it coming from almost like a third party. I removed myself from the ego. And I said, okay, if this was myself and I was somebody in a better place, what kind of advice would I give to myself? And, using that perspective, it was so easy. Like, stop getting high and eating Doritos. Start working out daily, like start exercising. And slowly I developed this sort of like a blueprint for what it's like to be somebody that's thriving. And in that, there's like the diet portion of it, there's the stress mitigation, there's the quality sleep. And I think doing this for a while allows me to really distance myself from the symptoms so that I can actually get away with traveling and eating crap. Like I had Irish nachos, which I don't know if you know that it's potato chips with cheese and some corned beef. We had that for St. Patrick's Day. It's something really I wouldn't touch. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole back when I was symptomatic. But now I eat it and I think to myself, okay, if German new medicine is correct, I'm convinced that this meal is not going to cause me any issues. And then I wake up tomorrow and I have, beautiful Mr. Hanky in the toilet.
Yeah.
And, but I remember thinking to myself, like, geez, if I eat popcorn, I'm going to guarantee myself have really bad diarrhea. But it was all in my head for a lot of it. Now, the only part that I'm going to really say wasn't in my head was back in 2020, right before my surgery. I had a severe abdominal inflammation. I had, 104 fever, clearly an infection. So I went to the ER, and there they took care of me with drugs, science, and modern medicine, and they did a great job, So I am all for the natural approach, but you know what? Drugs really did save my life. And there's some people out there, I feel like, ignore modern medicine because they're so upset with the way that we just kind of use biologics to mitigate symptoms and never get to the root cause. So, like, I know you believe in medicine, right? It's just not this, like, not the way to really as a root cause. Is that correct?
Allopathic medicine is just like the way that the system and the way that they use to think about the body is just like complete nonsense. And it's these medicines and drugs, they're a double-edged sword. And German new medicine helps us understand what the body is doing so that you can do these drugs correctly or use them more effectively. Like,
is that what did Dr. Hummer use drugs?
Yeah.
And surgery? Or
he
just didn't surgery, though?
No, he did. No, surgery and drugs. I mean, when we understand what's going, like it's like if, hey, you should cut out your colon. No, it's going to be inflamed forever. You should just get rid of it. Like, that's ridiculous. There's something, there's a root cause, address it, it'll go away. But sometimes the person has a really bad stricture, they're on their deathbed. Okay, let's cut out this little section of their intestines, and then use German new medicine to kind of help them. There's a time and a place. If someone has a really bad fever, it's a good idea to give them antibiotics to help, because what's removing these extra gut cells is bacteria and fungi. And so giving antibiotics kind of reins that back a little bit, lessens the symptoms. Giving fever reducers, it reduces the inflammation in the brain. When you because like what a lot of doctors will do, it's very dangerous. Like the kid, hey, you have Crohn's and colitis, you're going to be on drugs for the rest of your life. They get this existence conflict. So the kidney collecting tubules turn on. They start holding water. If you're a person that's taken prednisone and you blow up like a balloon, you probably had your kidney collecting tubules on. Your body felt like a refugee. Oh my God, I'm going to die. I have Crohn's. I don't know what's going to happen. Abandonment. I got broken up by my girlfriend. The body starts to hold on to this water. And what doctors love to do, the first thing, they hook you up to an IV and they just start pumping fluids into you. And someone who's in a flare, like that can be very dangerous, and cause them a lot more pain. So medicine's a double-edged sword, but there's not. But if you understand what's going on, you're swinging it the right way. And sometimes modern medicine gets lucky and helps people, and sometimes it doesn't. But with German new medicine, we can have a much higher success rate because we're using the tools properly.
Okay, so what advice do you have for somebody who's actually maybe just recently resolved a conflict, but they're dealing with symptoms of a flare, and maybe they're on prednisone or something or whatever they have? Like, what are some key things that helped you through flare states, allow you to make the pain go away?
Yeah. So the first thing is having that knowledge that hey, this is a natural process. Once these gut cells get removed, hey, you're in a flare. You're in the healing crisis. Like, you've resolved this conflict. Like, the hard part's already over. You just got to bear through these healing symptoms. So what are some things we can do for that? You take fever reducers. Take, pain relief pills. Things like that. And, if you're hungry, maybe go on, get a lot of protein into you is really important. So I like people doing whey protein drinks and gelatin, but if you don't want to, it's people when people don't understand what's going on, they can't make the right decisions on what to do, because literally all you do is you sit back and you manage the pain and you manage the symptoms until the things go away, until the symptoms go away, until the cell removal is done. And it just depends on the person's conflict, how long that's going to take. But,
So are you saying that if I have a flare, I should be celebrating?
Yes. It's hard to celebrate when you have a flare. It sucks, but literally when I get a flare, I'll tell you what I do when I get a flare, if you could even call it that. It's so you get this fever, right? So you have a headache. What do you do when you have a headache? You put a cold washcloth on your head. You try to remain cool. You sit on an incline so the pressure isn't going to your head. You take some fever reducer pills, and if your gut is, you take some anti-pain gut relief pills. And usually,
do you have any? Do you want to recommend?
Any generic. It doesn't matter. Any
natural stuff.
And so you could take natural. I don't have any. I mean, I'm sure there's natural ones out there, but essentially what most of these drugs are doing, like these biologics and prednisone, they're stimulants. So we're in the healing phase. We're in this vagatonic, this rest and digest. And that's when the symptoms get the most intense, when we're in the autonomic nervous system's in this rest and digest and heal phase. And so what these stimulants do is they take the autonomic nervous system out of that phase just a little bit chemically, and which can reduce the symptoms. But taking an antibiotic, there's a lot of natural antibiotics we can take, like herbs and stuff like that. But taking an antibiotic from your doctor, a lot of people in the holistic community are like, oh, you can't do that, But taking stuff like that is slowing down the bacteria and fungi, removing the flesh from your body, removing those extra gut cells we no longer need. So, it can greatly reduce the pain.
Gotcha. So you basically, you take care of your symptoms enough and you just relax, right? Is there anything else you do while you're in a flare?
I try to, when I'm hungry again, I get some extra protein into me.
When's the last flare you had?
I don't know.
Was it this year? I think the last time I was symptomatic was fairly recently, but I wouldn't even call it a flare. I would call it, now that I understand German new medicine, it was a increase of gut cells and then a very short-term increase. I understood that this was a bad portion, a bad relationship in my life, and what I did was I cut that off, focused on myself. I had diarrhea for 1 day, and now I was back to normal, feeling great. And it was like,
that's good.
And I think the length of the conflict is directly proportional to the length of the healing phase, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't had like a bad, like, digestive flare that I can remember. I can tell you about one.
That's so bizarre. You're literally being bombed.
Yeah, that was stressful, but I mean, it was very temporary. It was like only for like a week or two. So I'm from Ukraine right now, and currently Putin's bombing our city back into the Stone Age. Like, they just bombed our house and stuff. But I mean, I can tell you about
glad you're okay.
Thank you. I can tell you about a flare I had like before I knew what was going on. Before I had the German new medicine perspective, it was like my worst. All right, flare.
Let's hear it.
So I was living with a girlfriend at the time. We'd been living together for probably about a year, but things weren't going well. And so I was trying to like get her out of the house, trying to get her to move out. And like things were, I've never ever been that stressed out in my whole entire life. Like for like 3 months straight, I was so super stressed out. And so we ended up going on vacation together. I know, horrible idea, but that's how it happened. And we were on vacation, and we're like, all right, we're here. Like, let's just enjoy this and put things aside. We'll deal with them later. And also, and during this time, I'm like a dietary zealot. Like, I can only eat X, Y, Z. And we were actually at my parents' house, and they had cookies and pizza and like all these things like I shouldn't be eating. But I was like, you know what? I've been really good this year. I haven't had any symptoms this year. I'm going to eat these foods. And so I was eating these foods I shouldn't eat. It was just all psychological. And then I had resolved this conflict with my girlfriend at the time. And I remember like 2 or 3 days into the trip, I was so sick. I hate the doctor. I hate going to the GI doctor. But like I was so sick, I almost asked my parents to take me to the hospital. Like I was throwing up for days. And it was just this resolution of this super stressful situation with my girlfriend at the time, and then just me eating all these taboo bad foods. But I didn't know German new medicine. I had no idea, so it just stressed me out even more. That oh, my gut issues are back again.
Did you blame it on the food?
What's that?
Did you blame it on the food?
Oh yeah, I blamed it all on the food. Back then.
But now looking back, you're like, oh, wait a second. And so you've been testing this theory by eating whatever you want, right?
Yeah. And so just recently I was kind of struggling with coffee. That was like the only food I was like still struggling with, and it was still giving me diarrhea. And then I realized just a few days ago that me and that girlfriend, we got in a huge fight over like lattes. It like sounds silly, but we did. Oh. And once I realized that, because I was like, coffee's safe, I can tolerate coffee, da 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 da, and like still it was like giving me diarrhea. And then I realized it was linked like back to that relationship, and we got into like a really big fight over coffee one day, because I was like, how could you have coffee? That isn't good for you. Da 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 da. You don't care about your health. Like just being a holistic psycho, and yeah, like I just realized that, and like coffee, absolutely no issues.
Wow. So what you really feel like there is no food that you can eat that's wrong? Like how do you work with people that have allergies, say or like a gluten intolerance?
Yeah, so gluten intolerance, it's you just go back to like, hey, when did you decide you were gluten intolerant? It's like, oh, I read Grain Brain, or oh, something like along those lines. Because for me, like my starch intolerance didn't start until I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing this holistically and organically. And I read the specific carbohydrate diet book. Now all of a sudden carbs are the devil. And that's when I could eat starches relatively and be like fine before I started the specific carbohydrate diet. I still had diarrhea, but I was fine. After the specific carbohydrate diet, I would be sick for a day or two if I had anything that like wasn't on that safety list. And the only thing that changed was my perception of these foods. And so I help. Wow. I take people like, when did you decide? The first step is like, when did you decide you were gluten intolerant?
So what do you say to somebody who was born and maybe has celiac disease or something like that?
So a lot of, with babies, what do they eat? Milk. And so
yeah,
a lot of that's like tied back to like, like a lot of women like aren't breastfeeding, or they stop breastfeeding. They don't like maybe the baby doesn't like the bottle. So like for them, the baby, like it's like, I can't get the milk that I want. I want mama's milk, but she's giving me this baba milk. I don't want, like, that's depending on the baby's personality. They could develop, think about it, like when they have real milk again, it's like a resolution to the conflict. Like, I get mama's milk again. So, if someone's having, if a baby is having a hard time digesting milk, it isn't the milk. It isn't something the mother's eating. It's something like it's something. It's like has to do with the relationship between the mother and the baby, and the feeding schedule or something like that. It has to be there.
Interesting. So I know that there's a lot of people that are super into the genetic portion of, like, for example, Crohn's disease. There's a huge genetic component according to these people. What do you have to say about genetic research?
I say it doesn't make any sense to inherit genes that make you less capable of survival. And so, like, if you inherit a gene that makes it so you can't digest gluten, I mean, like, if you like lived 100 years ago, you're like guaranteed to die, because like, just it doesn't make any sense. So what's happening is we're inheriting or mimicking our family's behavioral patterns. That's where because when, and it's not always like, me and my brothers, I'm the only one who has digestive issues and had serious digestive or any health issues. My brothers, they're way more laid back than I am, and you can see it in their personalities. But when things appear genetic, it's usually because, this family tends to all behave the same way, or in a similar way.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I think, The Nutty Professor. So a movie that I watched back when I was a kid, and he goes, "Oh, I'm fat. It runs in the family." And he goes, "Boy, nobody runs in your family." And it's like, hey, it might be true. Everyone is overweight because that is the lifestyle that's being showcased throughout the household. Mm-hmm. So I can see that there's definitely a component to that. However, I am so fascinated by, genetics really, now that more people are giving up some of their DNA, and there's these meta-analysis, and it's really interesting to find that, well, all of these people actually have something in common with each other on a very genetic level, and maybe the combination is actually using all of the latest science plus what Dr. Hammer taught. Do you know if there's any documentary or anything that covers Dr. Hammer and his research?
If there would be, it would be in German, and the German media was not a fan of him. He got a lot of bad press, but there's a lot of most of his content is going to be in German. Learning German New Medicine, or learninggnm.com is my favorite English website to learn German New Medicine and start to wrap your mind around it. And there's a few YouTube channels you can watch to kind of help start to understand it. But yeah, it's tough because a lot of the public information out there about Dr. Hammer is negative because it's written by Modern Medicine, who Dr. Hammer is going to essentially put them out of business. A lot of these drug companies.
Yeah. He was explained, I think, from Wikipedia as a pseudoscientist.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind. After looking at the literature and the diagrams and how everything's connected, and us going through the whole human evolution process from the moment of conception, things like that are so fascinating.
Well, he went to court for something, for a lot of things, and they're trying to you're reckless with your cancer treatment. And he goes, I have a 95% success rate with stage 4 terminal cancer, stuff that you guys don't even treat. What are you talking about? These people get better. They're still alive, and you told them that they're gonna drop dead in a couple of months, and they took my treatment, and they're still alive and they're healthy.
What is your reason for starting your Heal Your Gut Guys? Do you want to just help as many people as possible?
Yeah, I've always wanted to do something, start a business and be ambitious and bring value to the world. And I just couldn't think of anything that could bring more value to the world than to help people with digestive issues. I wouldn't be doing this if there was someone else out there who already had the answer, but there was a big void in the gut health community, and so I'm here to fill it and help, because you literally can't do anything, especially there's some people they literally can't do anything. They can't work, and literally it's just flipping a switch in your brain, and things can change very quickly for the better.
I definitely agree with you, and that's half the reason I started this podcast, is because this is a niche that nobody has yet to explore, and I feel like the community in itself is so fascinating because it's so polarizing. One side thinks that there is Crohn's is incurable, not just that there isn't a cure, but it's incurable. They have changed the narrative in a way where there will never be a cure. And then as you warned me about, the Reddit forum, I've had several posts taken down from Reddit, and I've been publicly shamed for telling people that I am in remission and off of drugs, and ask me anything. And they're like, ask you anything, you're a snake oil salesman. So how do you deal with critics?
Probably not the most healthiest way. I mean, I have a short temper. I mean, I just tell people, I'll just be like, hey, look, I feel for these people, that they can't change their perception, because it's not. I want to help change them, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna work with the people who want to work with me. But I don't. But I can be a dick. I would be like, hey, this is natural selection at its finest, right here, guys. And that's a horrible thing to say, but
right.
I mean, I can't help someone if they're already chose defeat, and they want to take. It doesn't make any sense. When I sat down in front of the GI doctor and he told me I had to be on drugs the rest of my life, I was like, really? Wait, what's the root cause? Oh, I don't know. That was a totally unacceptable answer to me, even though every single GI doctor said that. I'm just the type of person who's just not going to take that BS answer. I'm going to find the answer.
Yeah, my GI doctor said that it's better we see other people, because I told him I am done with the Humira, and he goes, well, if you're not going to be taking drugs to mitigate this, I don't think this is the best option for you. And it just kind of really started to make me feel uneasy. And I had just recently switched to a new GI, and I will tell you what, I walked into that room and my energy suddenly dropped. And I've been exercising, I've been very fit, my hands were cold, I was very defensive, and it felt like a place where it's extremely uncomfortable. Could you imagine that being part of your routine is going to a place that actually does this to you? to your energy levels, to your mentality. And then she said, well, that's great and all, but how long have you been diagnosed? Oh, 2 years. Oh, that's not that long. How long have you been on medication or been off of medication? Almost 6 months. Oh, that's not that long. Just so you know, Crohn's is going to come back, and it's going to come back at any time. So because you're choosing to be off of this medication, you're making it very difficult to manage your symptoms long term. And I just, in my mind, I'm like, are you kidding me? Who taught you how to talk to people like this? You know, you're warning them over some hypothetical situation that is anxiety inducing, and the weight that you have to bear with that kind of mentality is unmanageable. I couldn't believe it. Fortunately, when she left the room, she was in here with another student, and he goes, Inflamed in the Membrane? I really like that title. I like what you're doing. I was like, thank you. You know, it was like, he's obviously a student, so he couldn't say that in front of the doctor. And I asked him, like, so do you think this is incurable? He goes, I don't think so. I think in time, you know, all of these, everything is going to kind of sort itself out. And I was like, you know what? I am so happy that he's going to be the person who's going to be replacing this current old style, old school mentality where, you know, they are just taught that drugs are the solution. Managing the symptoms long term is all you have to do. Don't worry about diet. Don't worry about exercise. Don't worry about stress management. Don't worry about therapy. None of those matter. They just give you a prescription and send you home. And if I was the doctor, I would tell people, look, this is, you know, inflammatory bowel disease. I highly suggest that you get a therapist. Here's even a referral for, you know. And then they could even make this an entire section of therapy, you know, to deal with these conflict shocks. Like, wouldn't that be a perfect world, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, the issue that I had is just they weren't even curious what the root cause was. It was just like, hey, this is what I just prescribe drugs and cut out colons. That's my job. You know, and I'm a computer programmer. Like, I have to know how. I'm an engineer. I have to know how things work. You know, it's one thing to have a conversation with a doctor and we're like trying to figure out because Dr. Crohn's and Dr. Hammer, they were curious. They were scientists. They were trying to figure out what was wrong. But today's doctors, they're drug dealers with a PhD. A lot of these, you know, GI doctors today.
You know, I love the story on how Crohn's got its name because Dr. Crohn, he actually wanted to call it something else, right? Terminal ileitis, I think. And they're like, no, Crohn's disease.
So it's just the idiocy in the GI community is like on another level. They Crohn's disease, inflammation from out the butthole. Okay, so if I have cold sores and hemorrhoids, do I have Crohn's disease? Yes, you would by that definition. But no, you don't. You'll never ever get diagnosed. But what he wanted to call Crohn's disease is regional ileitis, which just literally means the ileitis is inflamed, which is like a particular part of the small intestine. And, you know, they were like, no, let's call it Crohn's disease. And he knew that was going to be a problem because that the definition has just changed so many times, and it changes from doctor to doctor, from year to year. There's just nothing about the GI doctor community, the gastro and modern, that makes it's based all on nonsense. It's insane. Right. So why do you think that is? And do you think we'll ever be at a different place, or do we just have to go to Mars and start over? I honestly don't know. My job is just to educate people as much as possible. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to educate as many people as possible. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought of an analogy earlier, and say we worked at a tire shop, and this woman came in once a week with a nail in her tire. You know, we change the tire, right? And we patch it up. We don't ever stop her and say like, hey, do you ever think about not driving over nails? You know what I mean? Because it's our job to change the tire. And it's business for us. So I think the worst part about this medical business is, they're in the process of, they're in the business of opening up people, removing stuff. Yeah. Why would they bother to fix the root cause? They'll never see you again. And for me, I think that's success. For other people, it looks like, hey, your practice isn't doing so well. You've got less and less patients. I mean, I guess it's all that perspective, right? We just need a whole new era of GI doctors and just doctors that believe in science, but also don't ignore something so simple as conflict resolution.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's like trauma that, someone gets shot, some gets hit by a bus. Like, there's a lot of amazing things that modern medicine can do for those people. But as far as it comes to these chronic illnesses, I mean, they're headed. They're all headed in the completely wrong direction. We already have the solution to these things. It starts in the psyche. Like, people who have serious diseases, like they have serious like emotional issues. Like, it becomes very.
I agree with you. Yeah. My mother, she has multiple sclerosis. We talked about this a little bit beforehand. And the first thing I did when I found out about German New Medicine is I typed in MS, multiple sclerosis. And it turns out that it is an unwanted touch conflict. And I kid you not, I called my mother and I said, hey, when did MS first start? And she goes, I'll tell you exactly when it happened. Her brother put her in a headlock while her sister was laughing at her. And if it wasn't for her sister's husband breaking it up, things would have got really bad. And since then, and I was like, wow, that's so fascinating, because that's an unwanted touch conflict. Plus her, the dad, and there was a big abusive relationship leading up to that event also. And it's just so clear to me that this is an unwanted touch conflict that never got resolved. So what I did, I set up a family reunion. May 8th, it's Mother's Day, it's a Sunday, and it's my birthday. I'm flying to Chicago. I'm getting everybody involved in the same place, and I want to hug it out. And it's just going to be so exciting to see what happens moving forward. Like, if German New Medicine is real, I have a feeling my mom is going to get much, much better, you know?
Yeah, it's, I see it all the time, where someone, like, just not blaming foods anymore. I mean, I've seen just doing that, because like, a lot of the times the emotional issue is already done, it's over. And for some people, they're just blaming food and they're getting spooked by their symptoms, and they just get over that in like 20, 30 pounds in a month or two.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Like, I could imagine you have a conflict, it resolves, you have the worst flare of your life, but realistically, that issue is over with. Now the doctor telling you you've got a lifelong illness that could spark this new anger, and you're just associated it with the food, and you're in this never-ending cycle of blaming the thing that never had anything to do with it. Wow. This is a lot to unpack, Mike. So how about if anybody's interested in your is it a coaching program or just a tell us more about what you have to offer?
Yeah, so I have a ton of free content on YouTube. That's where I post most of my content. But if you are interested in working with me, I have a program. It's $497, and we have like a Facebook group, and my coaches are in there. One's a hypnotist, another one, she has like 10 years of experience using German New Medicine, and it's like only been translated into English for like the past 10 years. So she has a lot of experience with that. You could talk to us every week on a live Q&A where we answer questions every day in a Facebook group. So we just try to give you as much value as possible so you can get back to your life. But, a lot of people just get better watching our free content. So we're just looking to help as many people as possible.
Yeah, and keep the content coming, man. This is all great stuff, Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. That's an hour. I really appreciate your perfect explanation of what the heck could be going on here. I really look forward to catching up with you as, slowly but surely my message will get out there more. And I know a ton of people are going to be interested in this, what seems to be a too good to be true way of approaching Crohn's disease. It's so revolutionary that I just, my hat's off to you, man. You're very brave for what you've done. Just speaking out about not being on medication for me was very, took a lot of courage, but for you to stand up in front of hundreds of, thousands of people and tell them, look, this is undigestible anger, and here's how I did it. Here's how you can do it. This is hats off to you, man.
I had like 2 years of me being a food nut and an infection fighting nut. And then, last year is when I made a hard switch. And I got a lot of backlash for that. A lot of my old fans, like they can't stand me now. But, after you've been on these diets for so long and you're still having symptoms, I mean, it just takes people a little while to come around.
Yeah, number one thing, guys, quit. I honestly think getting your life in a more structured fashion where, you do eat whole foods rather than like bags of chips and processed stuff. I think seed oils do end up in our fat. I think you are what you eat, and you are what you was eating too. So it's like good quality, nutrient dense foods is number one thing, and it's like, just ditch the crap and kind of use this diagnosis as a way to take your old self. We say our prayer and we bury that old self and we start anew. Become the hero of your own journey. Do exactly what you think the superhero in this movie would do if they were you, and one foot in front of the other. Excellent stuff, man. Thank you so much, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. And I'll just say one more thing. So a lot of people think like I'm like all for eating crap food. If I had the willpower to, I would eat like a Weston A. Price, like nutrient dense diet. But I'm lazy. I'm a normal person. It would be better to eat these healthy foods, but it's important to do it without demonizing and blaming these other foods. And there's not many programs that do that. It's like either you eat clean or you die, and that causes a lot of issues.
Good. So, I mean, at any moment now, that if you wanted six-pack abs, you just clean up the diet, right? Start exercising.
Eat more protein or something. I don't know. I would go to a trainer and have him tell me what to do.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, that's you practice what you preach. It's like, go get help, outside source. It's so easy. Excellent. Good stuff, man. Thank you.
Thank you.